Okay, this is Saint the Legend, and welcome to tutorial. And this is actually MozzBog's and mine's setup for skill game checkpoints with any skill game character. You can use any skill game character. So I marked checkpoints 0, 1, and 2 with animation on yaw. I have a camera, and that's my first person rig. Okay, it's Permutic Bogs and Mutatuses and Shoguns, and I just grabbed a bunch of different rigs, rigged it all together. I even put some of my stuff inside, and I made my own first person rig for a game that I love called Metroid Prime. And let's see what we got going here. So this is a checkpoint tutorial where you could use any custom character, and have checkpoints. You know, like in a regular game, when you fall off the map or you fall off the terrain, you're going to restart at a checkpoint, right? But you could activate it on command. So let's just say, okay, you start at checkpoint 0, okay? You fall off the map, you'll restart it from the beginning, but the time still goes. The time doesn't get reset. Now, in order to counteract this, if you wanted to reset the time, right, you would have to put a area trigger on active, right, and make the event restart the entire game. So use a player event and checkpoint restart and say 0. You could only do that for that specific for the starting point. You know what I'm saying? Now, if you want to make a checkpoint that saves your progress over time, it's going to be an animation, not a checkpoint. So it's actually, it acts as almost like a save point and a checkpoint within the game. You know what I'm saying? You could probably tie this to a button command and say save the game, but you won't actually save the game because Trials Editor won't allow you to do that, obviously, right? There are limitations. This is a skill game builder within the same skill game, you know what I'm saying? So let's just show you the setup for those who want to see it. I used a object pointer, and the object pointer will be going nowhere, okay? But we do a value target to here. So you press Y and then you select abled object index to the variable data source. Now this is the variable data source that the set value events will send one corresponding signal to the variable data source. And the variable data source, since I'm borrowing from as its index, and then the position X, Y, and Z will be sending coordinates to X, Y, and Z position coordinate, right? Because all I did was, you know, select event target, which was the object pointer, so it's going to point the object somewhere. And then I use an OPE, right? I make sure it's local, I turn off modify rotation. X, Y, and Z, press Y to select a new value, and make sure you use a vector object info data source, and make sure you set it to position, okay? And obviously the position will be set on to object pointer, okay? Now the invertible trigger will act as an on-hit trigger, so it's like a trigger box, except it's more like a timed event, sends the signal to activate the main signal, right? So it's actually like turning on a light It's like giving it power, right? You want to set it to the least amount, which is 16 milliseconds, 1 tick. Make sure you check all these on, alright? Max impulses, it will disable, this whole thing will disable. After that, and then reset when it's abled again, which is actually going to be abled again. It's going to send one impulse, it's going to send one signal, then it's going to disable itself. And then we already discussed this. Now this is position is the same thing, except we're going to select event filter to pass on the power to the next chain. And then we're just going to say X, Y, and Z, Y to pick value and go to here. And this is how the checkpoint system works. You're going to say looping, you're going to say 16 milliseconds, and you're going to set start and end values to 0. So nothing's going to happen. And the reason why, the game thinks it's animating something, but it's really not. You see how the trick comes in? So when the game thinks it's animating something, and while it's on looping, it's almost like the game thinks that you have a spinning object that's constantly spinning and just turning it on and off. So you would want this checked on, okay? Now what you need to do is you need to grab the object pointer, right? Now you need to go to object pointer, right, and select target object. So you want to select your first target, which is 0. Your second target is 1, 2, 3, and however many you want. However many you want, okay? And you grabbed, and then you go to events and grab a set value event. Make sure it's set to set. And set the corresponding checkpoint numbers. Now these are in wholes and decimals. You're going to use the main numbers, not decimal points, okay? So you're going to say 0.00, 1.00, 2.00, 3.00. You know what I'm saying? You keep going up the chain like that. And then that's going to be checkpoint 0, 1, 2. And then obviously you're going to select the variable data source on each one of these events, okay? And then you're going to now the fun part, okay. Sorry, I'm going too slow, guys. Now, all you need to do is grab a trigger box. Since this is our first trigger box, this is going to be my first checkpoint. Okay? So make sure it's abled, and make sure that it's triggered by object instances to the game character. Okay? Grab it and select the game character. Make sure it's not on hit. Make sure disable after hit is off. And make sure on active is set to one of these events. So obviously 0 is marked as 0. When that happens, it will act as a checkpoint. And since it's on active, it can always be pressed over and over again until the box is disabled. So the trigger's still going, but the box is the main key to activate the trigger. Okay, so that's off. Okay, that's on, and then you're going to turn it off. So what happens here is when you get to this marker, there's going to be a hit trigger, And again, you have to set object instances to your main character so the corresponding signal works. Then object 2 will be the platform, so as soon as you touch that platform, it will send the signal. Now leave everything else default, okay? And all I have to do is on hit to off, and make sure the off select the trigger box. So meaning that this trigger box abled will be disabled forever until you want to re-able it again, obviously. Now there is another trigger box underneath this one. There's actually 3 layers, or how many checkpoints you want in huge diameters, right? So the second checkpoint underneath has an on and off switch linked to the trigger box underneath. Okay, and basically what's going to happen is after it shuts off the first layer trigger box, it's going to turn on the one underneath, so the other one is active. So then instead of spawning here, you'll always spawn here, and it'll just keep going. It'll just spawn here and spawn here, depending how many trigger boxes you activate and deactivate. So it just works as a chain. You see, you have set value 0, delayed impulse, which is set to 3 ticks, 50 milliseconds, and then you pass the impulse chains to on, right? And I forgot to also tell you that each one of these have to turn on this, this, and this on, okay? And the reason why it has to turn on, wait, I don't want to, yeah, the reason why it has to turn on those things is because those are act as OPE targets. So meaning it's a following animation, but it only works for 50 milliseconds, so instant. So your object's going to go from point A to point B, and then point A to point B, and it can be done infinite amount of times with this setup, acting like a checkpoint for any skill game character, or even the bike. But the bike has already checkpoints pre-made already, so you don't have to use this setup, right? You know what I'm saying? So for people that had difficulties, you know, making skill games, and you had to use this special trick between frozen and unfrozen that I never got and was like really glitchy, no, don't do it that way. And you don't even have to animate the physics bubble back and forth. Now you could just do it from animations. It's all animation wise. So you can have no physics whatsoever. The physics only follow the ball, because that's how the only way you can control it, unless you can manipulate the different movements with animations, but that would be 10 times harder, right? It will be less accurate, because remember, physics are always going to be more accurate than animations, but physics generate more lag. Physics is physics. It applies by in-world gravities and non-world gravities to make physics. And then animations are more controlled physics, meaning that if you want to make an animation to match a physics, it's going to take way more animations to match a physics, and physics just does it itself, right? And having that out of the way is this is on and off switch knowledge. Obviously, you have to definitely know how on and toggle work, obviously. But if you don't know anything about it, you just come here and learn, because I try to set it up in a way where you understand, right? So this is the most important part. Make sure your on switch is here. You don't have to turn it off, because there's something already turning it off anyway, okay? Because we have a object pointer, variable data source, and this is invertible trigger. So I mean, it's go do-do-doom, 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 okay? And so basically what you need is you just need a set value event, delayed impulse, an on event, right? Okay, and then this impulse chain will keep going and going. All right, so you just need that row, so you just got to multiply this row over and over again, okay? And then multiply this row over and over again. So you got an area trigger to an off and on, area trigger to an off and on, layer after layer after layer. Okay, so if I wanted to have 150 checkpoints, I'm going to have 150 trigger boxes. I'm going to have 150 of these setups. because it all works on a layer. There's probably an easier way of doing this instead of going one by one by one, but for people that want to make checkpoints, that don't want to go through all the calculations in math, you could use this setup to make that happen. And in the background I have the same setup again, except it's going to turn on a trigger signal and turn on the color green, which this is the wrong color. I gotta auto correct it to this. Alright, and that's how you make checkpoints, just to see how it works. This was a 15-minute, that one fast. Okay, so as soon as we start the game, there's something wrong. Okay, so remember, when you start the game, guys, in the skill game, okay, make sure you remove this. Make sure you have a camera that always game camera, okay? Alright? After your game camera starts, a starting event, let's say if you wanted to start an event in a skill game, the best way to do it is to spawn a invertible trigger, do all these settings, right? So it only does one tick. Spawn a camera in, okay? And then in a set amount of time, it will respawn to the next camera. We'll make sure it works like this. Okay. And it'll always work. Okay. Trust me. And then with this setup, you could actually make custom camera cutscenes where, you know, you activate a door, it activates an overall overview camera so you could see what you unlocked. Or if you're making like cinematical cutscenes with different animated characters, you can have like sequent movies in different camera angles and stuff, and then reverting back to the game camera. You know what I'm saying? That's perfect transitions. You can use curved data sources to manipulate the fade in and fade out values of your exposure on the camera, meaning black out, black in, fade in, fade outs, right? Since the reason why I positioned to this camera, because I already have a button combo set up, and this is a great combo button because I'll do this in the next tutorial, which is obviously going to be shorter, which is obviously going to be you know, an on press between the two cameras, and I could switch back and forth between cameras no matter, and still have the same, you know what I'm saying, like you'll understand when I start, you know, game camera, switch to the transition, I can just go back and forth. The only problem is the game won't be able to keep up with the different area transitions, right? So this is the game. As soon as we start the game, first person game, if you want something to follow your game here, like a gun or a flashlight, make sure when you create an item, you use, well, you glue it together, make the item, and then you go to the common, get a new glue tool, so you could reset its axis, because in trials, when you glue something, the axis gets screwed. So you need to re-glue it again with another object glue tool to reset its object axis to normal. Then your gun will always follow your desired position, and make sure you're looking left and right and up and down or in the same coordination when you're making a first-person game. Now let's just see how it works so you guys don't have to wait here forever. Alright, I start back in the same area, The reason why I went to black screen is because the camera does something funny, like, because it transitions at very fast speeds. So you could get creative, do whatever you want, put a camera out in the distance, out of the map, so it's invisible from the in-game, and then make a colorful transition, you know what I mean, between the cameras. Because if you have the default transition, you're gonna have like, you know, that little like texture glitch. You know what I'm saying? But it works. The checkpoint system works. So now we're going to go to the next area. We're going to jump. Now we activated this checkpoint. And now we're going to fall off and respawn at the same checkpoint. You see? Now we are going to go to the third checkpoint here, you see, and now this is the ending checkpoint. And then, you see, it works. Now, this is called progressive checkpoints, obviously. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and so on, in order to progress, or 0, -1, -2, -3, and so on, depending on what type of number you're adjusting. If you want checkpoints to resync, you just got to play around with this and, you know, see how it goes for you. You know what I mean? Obviously, you could watch MozzBog's checkpoint tutorial, right? But problem is, with his, there was a little bit of bugs here and there, and it only works if you have the same setup he has. If you have my setup, like if you want different camera angles when you start, cinematical cameras and stuff, like a menu screen, some people will start from the menu screen and then progress inward from different controller settings. And what you need there is you need this setup. So this checkpoint system will work for that sort of skill game. So no more falling off the map and after climbing stairs up to your original position. No more animating the bike, animating the physics bubble for the bike. No more of this. This is simple and easy and animation only, and anybody could do it now. I've been trying to work with MozzBog for a while now, and I never really tried making great tutorials in a while because I don't know. I just want to make something out of it. So thanks to MozzBog for showing me how it's done, and thanks to myself for taking this further. Now you could use any skill game character with this modified setup. So it's, remember, this is an animation, following animation, checkpoints. It's a checkpoint system, pretty much. It's a checkpoint system for all skill game characters. Okay, so meaning it's just an animation. It's just an animation, and plus it saves you progress because it doesn't revert. It's not really a. It's a checkpoint. Remember how checkpoints are made. They're animations, right? But there's also the functionality script within the code itself, right? Well, obviously we cannot manipulate in the trials editor changing the code, right? So you have to use player cards, right? So this works kind of in the same way. Remember, checkpoints are animations. They're following animations, okay? With the object pointer, an object array, and following animation, it's going to position the objects in its corresponding positions, and then the on and off switches at interval times are going to set that option infinite amount of times. I'm sure it's infinite. Like, I fell off the map 100 or 200 plus times just to make sure, and it works. Okay, so I'm also going to give a shout out to MozzBog, because he makes great first person skill game tutorials. I could never make one of those because he started it, right? You should go follow him. For third person, you should follow me, right? On my other channels, I have third-person tutorials, right? And I'll probably be making one more tutorial after this, which is an on-off mastery tutorial, which is the best on-off triggers you can imagine for trials. So you can pretty much make The Last of Us in first-person and third-person with on-off switch controls, and it's amazing because why not? Right? Even though Trials doesn't have great, human objects, which I wish they came out with a separate head, a separate arm, a separate leg, so you could make your own characters. I think that would be cool. You know what I mean? Like an awesome level max 2 pack. But I want to end this video at 25-minute mark because I don't want to make it too long. So I'm saying the legend. I hope this tutorial helped, and I hope my commentary and everything worked well for you, and see you next time.